sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back into the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you, as always, by the GSMC Sports Network. We are in our third segment of the day here on today's show. This is one of my favorite new segments to present to you guys. My picks, Chris's picks of the week. We have a lot of fun games, a lot of good NFL action this weekend, and I just want to make my picks on some really important games around the league. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Should be an exciting third segment. Starting off with a huge interconference game, one of the best ones of the weekend. A couple good interconference games at that one that I'm going to mention towards the end of my segment. But this one is just as good. Packers-Texans. I believe it's a early window game here on the East Coast. And this is really a battle of two guys at the QB position in CJ Stroud and Jordan Love, who, after their first seasons or first full starting season in the case of Jordan Love, have really proved to be two guys that throughout their NFL careers can be at a high level. As IP14 enters the chat, how are you, my friend? The question about his fantasy squad, Eckler or Juju, if Mike Evans is out. I got B-Rob in my lineup too. I feel like I'm not certain about the entire situation with Mike Evans. I haven't heard news about whether or not he will or will not play or what his injury could be. But if that is the case, then I do really like Austin Eckler, even though he may not get as many touches as you would like if you're in a league. As he asks, also, do you think Josh Jacobs gets a touchdown this week? It's been super disappointing for me this season. Let's start off with the starting question, and then we'll address the Jacobs scenario as well. I feel like if you're looking for a running back who's dynamic, I think Eckler's a guy. I don't necessarily know what Juju could be for this Chiefs offense just yet. He does definitely have a lot of upside, what with Rashee Rice being out, but I still don't know to what effect. I know that Austin Eckler, though, is a very nice RB2 for the Washington Commanders. And even if you have Brian Robinson in your lineup, I feel like if you were to start both of them, that could be a very nice step, because I love what Washington has been doing with these running backs in terms of their college-style offense. But it's a nice little situation. In terms of the Josh Jacobs question here, I feel like looking at this game, he could be a very important factor just because the Texans will be looking to generate pressure with guys like Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter up front on Jordan Love. But at the end of the day, it's going to depend upon how many touches he gets and where they will come on the football field. So I could see him scoring a touchdown this week, but I'm not necessarily certain that this game will be dictated by the run if I'm the Packers. I think it could be more so for the Texans, but for the Packers, maybe this is a game where you expect Jordan Love to really want to shine as much as possible. And with all the weapons he has at his disposals, why not? But in this game, actually, going back to my pick for this game, I really think the Texans are better equipped to exploit what, like I said, is a bigger issue than people who follow the Packers. As IP also says, I don't get why they keep throwing in the red zone every time. Jacobs a top 10 back in real life. And I agree. I really like what Josh Jacobs could bring to the Packers. I was a little bit skeptical before the season start about what he could bring to the Packers, but with all his injuries with Las Vegas, but he really can prove to be someone who is very valuable. And not for nothing, I would love to see, them handle him the ball more in the red zone, because that's the kind of back he is. I love him being very physical in the red zone, kind of being aggressive towards opposing defenses, really challenging them in that area of the field. But I don't know why LaFleur feels so reluctant. I feel like he just wants Jordan Love to play a little bit more hero ball than we think, but it's a lame excuse to not give someone like Josh Jacobs, or the caliber of Josh Jacobs, a chance towards the goal line, because he can be an asset in that regard for them. And that's why I feel like picking the Texans is the right way forward in this game, even though they are giving 2.5 points to the Packers here. So, in this game, expect a lot of situations where CJ Stroud is trying to extend the field, really test this Packers secondary like in a way that I've never think they've been tested before. I think Stephon Diggs has another great game. I really like what Tank Dell can be. And look for them to win their second straight game without Nico Collins. Just going to show that there is depth there to this Texans wide receiver room, unlike anyone else in the league. And so that's why if you were to ask me to pick this game, I would definitely say the Texans, even though I love what the Packers could bring to this game. If they actually, like IP14 wants, hand the ball off to Josh Jacobs. But thank you for your comments, my man. Good luck to you in your fantasy football exploits this week. The second game, though, that I want to touch upon, Jets-Steelers. Very interesting Sunday night game. And I feel like it just got a lot more flavor with the Davante Adams trade. But when I think about the Jets, right? Let's look at the Jets side of things here. I really am hammering home the fact that you had the weapons in-house you needed without bringing in Davante Adams to succeed. And you really failed those guys if you're really desperate to bring in a guy who Aaron Rodgers has performed well with. Because, not for nothing, Garrett Wilson has had Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle, and Trevor Siemian as his quarterback before in this league. How are you going to take away what this guy brings to the table with much less competent quarterback play than Aaron Rodgers brings to the table, and not respect him the way he deserves to be respected? And Breece Hall as well. Both of these guys succeed without Aaron Rodgers, so why are the Jets acting like they can't with him? And why are they feeding Aaron Rodgers' quote-unquote ego to play into the whole Davante Adams narrative and play into this whole narrative that he can't perform without guys like Lazard and Adams at disposal? And just goes to show that anyone could be willing to sell their souls to get their guy to perform. And I really don't like the tension this could create as a result for the Jets. And in this game against the Steelers, not for nothing, I think the Steelers, even if Russell Wilson is the guy going forward, which I don't necessarily like, I feel like they're a challenge for anybody because they're just a scrappy team that nobody really wants to play at any point in the season. However, just because I feel like I saw a lot of positive things without Davante Adams from the Jets last week against the Bills, I'm taking the Jets in this one. And it's a very reluctant pick, -1.5, but I feel like right now the Jets are a team that could be buying in, as IP also says I think Breece's value goes up with the Davante trade. That could be the case because you're exactly right in thinking that they might run the ball to open up more avenues for a guy like Davante Adams, or vice versa. Davante opens up a lot more opportunities like you are suggesting here, getting more red zone opportunities, and coach said he committed to run first. I agree with you, but I am still kind of worried about the overall success of the Jets offense as well, because it's not, going to have to all be about Rodgers. It can be about the team's success. And that's what I want to see first and foremost. What with the addition of Davante Adams. If this team can figure out how to distribute the wealth, if this team can consistently win football games, then I'll be more high on, as IP also suggests, Aaron Jones was an RB1 in Green Bay with Rodgers and Davante for like 4 seasons. And that's kind of what I'm trying to hammer home here, is that you need a guy like Breece Hall to really succeed, for the Jets to really be someone who I pick with a little bit more excitement week in, week out in games such as this. But it should be an interesting one, and that's why I decided to pick it, because of the question marks surrounding the Jets, because of what the Steelers now trusting Russell Wilson could be in this matchup. But let's go to a divisional matchup, a little bit more of a disappointing divisional matchup next. The Bengals and the Browns. And the reason I picked this game is not for nothing. The Browns defense can keep them in this one, but it's going to have to be over-reliance on your secondary to slow down the Bengals offense. And yes, I know that the Bengals offense underperformed against New York last week, but I still think that it's going to be the driving force to any success they have this season, whether or not they might even be able to get back into the AFC playoff picture. And that's why I'm picking them in this game, even though it's a bigger spread than most at -5. But I do feel that the Browns right now are a team that's kind of hoping too much. They're not necessarily playing to win. They're playing to anticipate what could be, if that makes sense. They're playing to hopefully, if they get into situations where they feel they can win but come up a little bit short, say, okay, maybe once Nick Chubb is back, we win this game. But that's not going to be the case for as long as, like I said, Deshaun Watson is your starting quarterback. There has to be a point this season where Kevin Stefanski at least considers Jameis Winston coming in this season, because I think he is a guy who can really bolster this team. He, wherever he goes, brings joy. He brings excitement. He brings a level of intensity, a swagger to every team he goes to. And I just feel like the Browns need that right now, other than the kind of staid, kind of rusty nature of what Deshaun Watson is right now. So that's why I'm taking the Bengals with the higher spread of the week here among my picks for this game. And then another divisional game that's a little bit more exciting, in fact, way more exciting in my humble opinion, Lions-Vikings. My dad was actually mad about this game not being flexed, but I do like it in the late window here on the East Coast as one of those games where you're really excited to see these two teams go at it for NFC North supremacy in a shocking matchup here in terms of where the Vikings are this season at this point. And I think that this game's going to be very competitive, and I think that Brian Flores' defense will be a bright spot in this game, but I can't help but think that the Lions have really turned a page on what their offense could be this season. Because to start the season, I was a little bit concerned about Jared Goff and how he ran this offense. But over the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks after the bye, they've looked like one of the best offensive units in the league, both in the run game, where they can just put you to bed with how they run the football, and in the pass game as well, with all their little trick plays and ways they can confuse the defense. I just think that right now, they're the more complete team, as Baxter Loafman says. It says Malik Neighbors has a groin injury now. Wow, I did not hear that news. Very intriguing news for the Giants, and in terms of fantasy as well, to say that Malik Neighbors has an injury of this kind of magnitude, because after the concussion, we didn't necessarily know how he progressed. It looked like he was progressing very well to come back within a certain timeline, but no, the groin injury, that's pretty bad news for a Giants offense that desperately needs his help right now. But going back to this Lions-Vikings game, I'm picking the Lions here at +2.5, actually giving points to the Vikings as an underdog here. But I do like the Lions a lot in terms of how they can potentially confuse a Brian Flores-led defense that hasn't been tested as much at this point and hasn't necessarily been deterred to this point, to the extent that the Lions can deter them. So that's why I feel like the Lions are my favorite. And the last one I want to go to before we take a quick break is the game that actually did get flexed to the Monday night slot, Ravens-Bucks. And I'm actually happy that this game got flexed to the spot, because it's a very weirdly bizarre game between two interconference teams. Yet the Ravens have the most appealing, most exciting to watch offenses in the league, with a very balanced running attack, and Lamar finally getting some of his receivers going, like Zay Flowers, And then you had the Bucks coming with a swagger, just put up 51 points on the Saints. Just coming with a lot of mojo. Baker, unafraid to be this swashbuckling guy, no pun intended, for this Bucks team. But at the end of the day, I just like the Ravens in this one a lot. 3.5 point favorites. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily feel worse about the Bucks in this game. I definitely think that if the Bucks lose this game, as Baxter Loman says, he still has a good chance to play, but it's on his report. Good to note. Thank you for that information, my man. Thank you for helping, as Andre also enters the chat as well. I think in this game, though, it will prove that, if anything, the Tampa Bay offense is exciting, but I just still don't trust that defense as much for Tampa Bay. We know we have a lot of good players, but they haven't necessarily been on the field all at the same time. So that's a question that I have about this team. Whereas the Ravens, I have less concerns about their offense going forward than I think. But at the end of the day, if the Bucks lose, I don't necessarily think I will be that worried about them because the Ravens are a good team. As Baxter Loman also says, should I start Kirk Cousins or T-Law? I think T-Law could be the sneaky start. He's got a ball in London. I actually think he's the better matchup in this game. I like T-Law in London acclimating to that situation. Second week there, going to Patriots squad that really, still isn't the sum of their parts, even with Drake May leading their offense on the defensive side of the football. I think there are ways that T-Law can perform well. Plus, Evan Engram being back's a plus. Whereas Kirk Cousins, yes, I don't like the Seattle defense that much, but I don't necessarily know if Kirk Cousins, week in, week out, is going to be someone who's going to put up the numbers that he has in the past couple of weeks. So I think T-Law could be the sneaky start as well. And why not start him this week in a matchup that I feel like favors him a little bit more? But thank you for that information. But we do have to take a quick break. I hope you liked those picks for this week. But coming up on the other side, I'm going to give you my Super Bowl odds updates. As Baxter Loman also says, thanks for input. Splash Broke saying Vikes are giving the Lions 1.5. Sorry about the confusion, maybe if there was any line movement throughout the week. I did actually write this down a little bit early in the week, as early as Monday actually. So thank you for that information. But coming back after this quick break, we'll be talking about some Super Bowl odds as well. How that has been affected through a little bit over a quarter of the season. We'll be right back to talk about that after this short break.